is expected to always produce tangible outcome, but despite the rounds of one-on-one dialogue between the special envoy and the personal representative of the Dalai Lama and the Chinese governmental delegation, no progress, remarkable progress whatsoever has been made, because according to the Chinese delegation, that the Dalai representative has raised pretty tough demands, and their demands are too challenging to be accepted, and therefore there is no point whatsoever for any more negotiations to be seriously conducted between the two sides. I'd like to have your thoughts, Teresa.
Well, again, I know certain disputes are difficult and take time. The Dalai Lama has assured that it doesn't want Tibet's independence. And these processes may take more than one generation and one person. You have seen that in many other situations. I know one particularly well, Macau. There has never been a dispute like the one that is we're discussing now. Mm-hmm. But either Macau, Hong Kong, there has been generations of discussions, many years. Some problems take longer than others. We defend the peaceful solutions for these disputes, so maybe you will have to give time.
French President Nicolas Sarkozy may be viewed by the Chinese netizens and the general public here in this country as a little bit too whimsical in terms of always talking to the Dalai Lama, and this may threaten to generate more hot debates which might be very hostile to the French, and the French economic interests might be endangered here in the Chinese market, particularly at this critical moment when both sides, the Europeans and Chinese, should join hands to tackle the financial meltdown. Do you think that this upcoming meeting between the Dalai Lama and the French President Nicolas Sarkozy will undermine the hard-won solidarity between the two sides?
I hope it won't, and I don't think it should. I think I'd point out that Nicolas Sarkozy has been very careful in meeting the Dalai Lama, not in France, but in Poland. So he has already made concessions to the Chinese concerns. But this is a dialogue between two sides, and of course, what President Sarkozy should not be doing is simply agreeing to all of China's demands immediately. I think he is right in a sense to encourage and to continue seeing people like the Dalai Lama. What I would also say, I just wanted to sort of raise one point, which is a colleague of Teresa's and mine, a council member, Mr. Martti Ahtisaari, a former president of Finland, who has just won the Nobel Peace Prize, spoke to us last week in our council meeting and gave us one piece of advice, which is he said that in any dispute resolution, what he's found over his generations of working on this is that you should always bring the two sides together as quickly as possible and get them arguing and discussing things as quickly as possible, and that's the only way that you resolve disputes.
Before they realize how bad it is to meet together. But the thing is, next month, your organization, the European Council on Foreign Relations, will publish a policy paper concerning the China-EU summit on December the 1st in France. What's the thrust of this paper?
Perhaps John is one of the authors. Maybe let's hear him first.
This is a paper that we've been working on based on a couple of myself and a colleague's experience of the EU-China relationship. But really the thrust of this is aimed at European policymakers, and it's aimed to persuade European policymakers that China is not an EU accession state. Our view is that over the last decade or so, Europe has tried to transform and to shape China as though it is a country that can be shaped by European policies, and it's not. It's as I know very well, a hugely powerful country, and a country which has its own policies and its own goals. And what I want Europe to do is to recognise those, and to recognise that China has very specific and strong interests, and that Europe does too. And that what we need to do is, in a sense, respond to China's policies to pursuing its interests with policies of our own, of Europe's own, to pursue its interests, rather than continue to pursue this slightly nebulous relationship where we try and transform China.
With the impact of the financial crisis that started from Wall Street, do you think the bilateral trade between the European Union and China will be subject to the negative impact and will decline naturally? So what would be the joint efforts by the two sides to survive the current dilemma?
I think I have mentioned a few. There are been some problems with market access or intellectual property rights in China for European products. This has been a complaint which is on the table often. As I said, there's a trade investment deficit from China in Europe. It would be very convenient if China would be more involved, and it would create a further interdependence. And I think also the existence of a large internal market in China is a very positive thing. And so these are opportunities for developing economic relations among two countries. I think also that the participation of China in the world governance financial system is important. I think this meeting in Washington is a very good opportunity for the recognition of the role that China, other developing countries, I would say like Brazil, like South Africa, should take and have more in participation in these institutions.
The problem has been, despite the trade deficit on the European side, the top banker of China, Mr. Zhou Xiaochuan, threatens to let the RMB devalue it a little bit to encourage more of our exports amidst the current backdrop of the financial crackdown. But when we come back, we'll rather look at the internal wrangling and also the positive forces within the European Union to join hand and tackle the financial meltdown. You are watching Dialogue with Madame Teresa Gouvier, former Portuguese Foreign Minister, and Mr. John Fox, a senior policy fellow with the European Council on Foreign Relations. We're discussing EU-China relations, but in the second half, we'll look at the internal matters of the European Union. Don't go away. We'll be right back.